Saturday morning, 7 o'clock, somebody's front lawn. A card table with a bedsheet over it. And the woman running that sale has already made every decision that matters. She looked at each piece, decided what it looked like, and wrote a number on masking tape. She priced the appearance. She never once turned it over. That's the whole game. Just the difference between what a thing looks like and what a thing is. So today, 15 pieces to always stop and inspect at a yard sale, a church bazaar, a flea market, an estate sale in a garage. And at number 1, in a chipped cereal bowl at $2 each, is the one almost everyone in America walks straight past. First, your kit. About $12, and it fits in a coat pocket. A 10-power loupe, a small magnet, your phone, a few zip bags, and a UV flashlight if you like. Now hear me on this. These are screening tools. They tell you what deserves a second look. Not one of them confirms anything. Nothing here asks you to scratch, burn, or damage a single thing. And please don't let anyone talk you into carrying an acid test kit to a yard sale. That's concentrated acid, on a folding table, in the sun. Number 15. The dollar tin of tangled chain. Every sale has one. A cookie tin, a zip bag of snapped chains, single earrings, a watch with no hands. Priced by the box, because nobody could face untangling it. Your 10-second check isn't the chain, it's the clasp. Turn it into the light with your loupe and read the tiny letters. 1/20th 12 kgf, 1/10 10 kgf, rolled gold plate. That's gold-filled, the most misread mark in this country. Not paint, not a wash, but a genuine layer of gold bonded onto a base metal. Red flag, and it's the first correction of the day. You've been told gold and silver aren't magnetic, so anything that jumps at the magnet is junk. Please don't. Solid gold brooches have steel pin stems, sterling clasps have steel springs, lockets have steel hinges. The magnet grabs the spring, the piece swings over, and somebody drops a real one back in the box. Brass and pot metal aren't magnetic either. A magnet can rule a piece in, it cannot rule a piece out. Safe next step. Buy the tin only at a price you'd happily pay for a box of costume jewellery, then sort it at your kitchen table with the loupe. Number 14. The cigar box nobody opens. Here's a pattern that holds at almost every sale in America. The women's table is picked clean by 8:30. The box of men's things beside it never gets opened. Cufflinks, collar studs, tie bars, a watch chain with no watch on the end. What to spot is weight, and a name. Crements is the one to know. George Crements founded the firm in Newark, New Jersey, in 1866, and for most of its life it made men's collar buttons and cufflinks. The good ones carry a heavy 14-karat gold overlay. 10-second check, and it's a shape. A proper Albert chain, worn across a man's waistcoat, has a T-bar at one end that slid through his buttonhole and a swivel clip at the other that carried the watch. Both ends present means it was built for a job. Check the swivel and the T-bar for a stamp, because on many chains, that's the only place a maker ever signed. Red flag is links that spring open when you pull them. Number 13. Everything black. The dark, dirty pile most people won't touch, because it reads as ruined. Sterling that has sat in a drawer for 30 years does go that deep, even, storm cloud grey, and it polishes back beautifully. That much is true, but here's the second correction. Blackness proves nothing about how much silver is there. Silver plate is silver on the outside, that's the whole point of it, and it tarnishes black exactly the same way. So your 10-second check is the letters. Sterling, or 925, or a small walking lion for English work, means solid. EPNS means electroplated nickel silver. A 1, or quadruple plate, means plate. And the one that catches everybody. German silver, nickel silver, alpaca. They sound wonderful and contain no silver at all. Copper, nickel, and zinc, named for a colour. Red flag, and I'll be honest. Marks can be missing, worn away, or faked, so letters are strong evidence, not proof. Safe next step. Wipe one small window with a soft cloth to find a mark, and stop. Don't dip it and don't polish the whole thing, because the dark in the recesses is what makes an engraved pattern readable. Number 12. The rhinestone brooch with 2 cloudy stones. This one's personal for a lot of us, because there was a brooch like this on a winter coat, it caught the church lights, and you can still see it. Older rhinestones are glass, and the good ones were backed with a whisper-thin layer of foil to throw light back through the stone. That's where the fire comes from. So cloudiness is not patina, it's water damage. Foil gets wet once, it corrodes, and it goes grey for good. 10-second check. Look at how the stones sit. Older work seats them in cups with closed backs, held by prongs or a rubbed-over edge. Reproductions are often glued into open cups, and under the loupe you'll see hard yellow glue. And if you want a temperature clue, rest a stone briefly against the clean inside of your wrist. Glass tends to read cool for a moment, where acrylic doesn't. Treat that as a weak clue, never a confirmation. Red flag. A dozen grey stones means somebody washed it. And whatever you do with the piece, keep it away from the sink, the jewellery cleaner, and the steam machine, forever. Now, 3 quick ones. Everybody's heard of these, so I'll skip the history and tell you how to buy them safely. Number 11. The chunky old plastic bangles. In the 50-cent basket, among the sunglasses and the beads. Most is worthless. A little of it is bakelite, the first fully synthetic plastic, patented by Leo Baekeland in 1907, and collectors chase it. 10-second check is weight and sound. Bakelite is noticeably dense for its size, and 2 pieces knocked gently together give a deep, solid clunk rather than a thin click. Red flag. And here's the honest part. Every quick field test for this gives false results some of the time, and the polish-based test people love leaves residue and can mark a finish. Don't do chemistry at a card table. Safe next step, and it's the rule I'd carry all day. Pay a price you'd be content with if it turns out to be ordinary plastic. More than that, walk. Number 10. Silver and turquoise from the southwest. What to spot is the workmanship. Hand-hammered, hand-stamped silver is very slightly irregular, and that irregularity is the beauty of it. The stone itself varies enormously. Genuine turquoise can be heavily veined or almost clean, natural or stabilized, and imitations can be made to mimic any of it, so no single look settles anything. 10-second check. Look for a maker's mark on the back, then put the loupe on the stone edges. Dyed howlite, a common imitation, is a white stone soaked in blue, so colour tends to concentrate in the cracks and a chipped edge can show white underneath. A visible rim of glue is worth noting too. Gather several clues together, because not one of them confirms a thing on its own. Safe next step. Prices here swing enormously with maker, age, materials, and provenance, so treat any number you hear online as a rumour. Buy it because you like wearing it. If it turns out to be signed work, that's a gift, not a plan. Number 9. The dish of crosses, medals, and rosaries. Set apart in a little bowl, and often underpriced, and the reason is human. Pricing the sacred feels uncomfortable, so people put a low number on it. Third correction. You'll be told a Catholic cross was traditionally 18-karat gold. Across American devotional jewellery, that simply isn't so. Many examples that turn up at a sale here are sterling, gold-filled, or plain base metal, bought at a church goods shop rather than a jeweller. Which isn't bad news, because the value is usually elsewhere. Look at the beads, not the crucifix. Many mid-century American rosaries were strung with faceted rock crystal, or garnet, or carved bone, on sterling chain, with a hand-wrapped wire loop either side of every bead. That wrapping is hours of work, and it's the tell. Safe next step, and a legal one. If a piece contains coral, several species are restricted, the rules differ by state, and they've changed in recent years. Wear it, keep it, pass it down. Check current federal and state rules before you sell or ship it. Number 8. The tiny enamelled leaf. A small silver butterfly, or a leaf, glowing with a colour that looks like wet glass. $1, because it's small. Scandinavian silver is a great, quiet collector field, hiding in plain sight in American houses because so many families brought it home or inherited it. David Anderson founded his workshop in Oslo in 1876, and the firm became practically synonymous with enamelled silver. Georg Jensen opened his Copenhagen silversmithy in 1904, and is one of the most collected names in silver. 10-second check, and it's a lovely one. Real fired enamel is glass, melted onto metal in a kiln. It sits down into the recess with visible depth, it has a hard, glassy surface, and where it fails, it chips rather than peeling. Painted imitation tends to sit up on top and lift away in flakes. Then turn it over and look for 925S, the word Norway or Denmark, and a maker's signature. Take all of that as clues rather than proof, because old pieces lose marks to wear and repair, and marks can be copied. 7 left, and 2 quick things. If you enjoy this sort of thing, subscribing genuinely helps. And the part I never skip. I'm not a certified appraiser, and nothing here is an appraisal, an insurance valuation, or legal advice. Values in every category I've mentioned move enormously with condition, rarity, maker, provenance, and recent sold comparables, so don't take any number as fixed. Before you buy, sell, or insure anything you believe is valuable, have it looked at in person, and check with a certified appraiser and your own state and local regulations. Some antique jewellery contains ivory, tortoiseshell, restricted coral or protected feathers, and federal and state law limits selling and shipping those. Older costume jewellery can contain lead, cadmium or nickel, so wash your hands after a long sorting session and keep pieces away from small children. And never test old jewellery with acid, flame or a hot needle. Number 7. The cheap-looking dark red glass. Small dark red beads, or a brooch crusted with tiny red stones set shoulder to shoulder in a dull yellowish metal that isn't gold. $5 at nearly every sale. It may be Bohemian garnet. A great deal came to America in the trunks of families from the Czech lands, and the tradition was to cover the whole surface in dozens or hundreds of tiny rose-cut stones, so the piece read as one solid living red. 10-second check, and it's an inspection rather than a verdict. Loupe first. Cut stones show flat faces meeting at crisp junctions. Molded glass shows softly rounded edges, sometimes a seam, often little bubbles inside. Then hold it to a lamp and see whether each stone lights on its own. Then look at the settings and note whether stones are held by metal or by glue. Colour and construction alone won't settle it. Safe next step. Nobody at a scrap counter wants this, because the metal is a low-grade gilded alloy and weighs nothing. So buy it at costume jewellery money. And if the asking price ever climbs past costume jewellery money, stop and have it looked at properly before you pay. Number 6. The souvenir pin with a tiny picture in it. An oval brooch or a pair of cufflinks with a miniature scene on the front. A ruined temple. Flowers on black stone. It looks like a gift shop souvenir and it's priced like one. It may be a micromosaic. In Rome, from the 1700s onward, craftsmen in the tradition of the Vatican mosaic workshop drew molten glass into hair-fine rods, sliced them into minute tiles, and set them one at a time into dark cement. 10-second check, the most satisfying on this list. Put the loupe on the picture. A print is flat, sometimes shows a dot pattern, and sits under a smooth dome of glass. A micromosaic dissolves into thousands of separate tiles laid by hand, and the surface is faintly uneven where they meet. Its Florentine cousin, pietra dura, is thin slices of real stone, so you'll see seams and natural grain. Safe next step. They hate water, so wipe the frame, never the picture. Number 5. The pair of earrings that are not earrings. 2 matching ornaments in the bin, flat across the back, with a hinged blade instead of a post or a screw. Sellers call them earrings. They're dress clips, and they clipped onto a neckline, a lapel, a hat or a shoe. And some are half of something better. In 1931, a French jeweller in Paris named Gaston Candace received a United States patent for a brooch mechanism. Coro bought it, and from 1935 sold the design as the Duette. 2 dress clips, plus a separate frame with a pin. Slot the clips in and you have 1 large brooch. Take them out and you have 2. 10-second check. Look on the back of the clip for the words Coro Duette and a patent number. Then look in the bin for the frame, because people genuinely throw those away thinking they're scrap. A duet missing its frame is worth a fraction of a complete one. Safe next step. Keep clips and frames in one bag and never split a set to sell it faster. Number 4. The little box marked Grandpa's Army Things. It sits at nearly every estate sale in this country, near the medals and the folded flag, and moves for almost nothing because it reads as memorabilia, not jewellery. What's in there is sweetheart jewellery. During the war years, a man shipping out would buy his mother, or his wife, or the girl he meant to marry, a small pin carrying his unit's insignia. Sterling, very often, sometimes enamelled, sometimes with a little chain and a heart. They were made in enormous numbers, and most are modest money, and I'd rather tell you that than have you hope otherwise. But they're one of the few categories where the story can be traced. Insignia are documented, so you can often identify a division, a corps, sometimes a ship. 10-second check. The word sterling, a maker's name, and any engraving on the reverse. A name, a date, a place. That's the moment a common pin becomes one man's pin. Red flag. And it's an ethical one. A genuine service medal in that box is a separate subject with its own rules, and it deserves a specialist rather than a folding table. Number 3. The empty box. And here's the one nobody picks up. At the end of the table, a heap of empty jewellery cases. Worn leather, faded velvet inside. 50 cents for the lot, often free if you ask. Open the lids. 2 reasons. The first is plain money. A period presentation case has a small market of its own because collectors matching a loose piece back to its box will pay for it. An empty case is a component, not a joke. The second is better, and it's the trick I'd most like you to take home. Printed inside that lid is the name and town of the shop that sold the piece, which tells you roughly when, because retailers open and close. Roughly what class of goods, because a fine jeweller and a five and dime are different animals. And that somewhere in that house there was probably a piece good enough to have arrived in it. So read the lid, then go back to the dollar bin and look again with different eyes. It's the cheapest research you'll ever do, and nobody teaches it, because there's no margin in an empty box. Number 2. The plain gold bangle with black lettering. A heavy gold bangle, fairly plain, with a name cut into the surface in old-fashioned English lettering, the letters filled with black. It's Hawaiian heirloom jewellery, and its history is older and less tidy than the version usually told. The style grew out of 19th century Hawaiian royal taste and Victorian influence together, and historical accounts genuinely differ over which bracelet ought to be called the first. What is well documented is that Queen Kapiolani and Princess Liliuokalani attended Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in 1887, and that Old English name lettering filled with dark enamel became a lasting Hawaiian family tradition, carried on to this day. 10-second check. Read the inside of the band for 14K or 18K, and for a maker. Then look hard at the black. On good work, the letters are cut deeply or pierced clean through, and the enamel is fused down into the cut, level with the gold and hard as glass. On a copy, it's paint sitting on the surface, already wearing thin where the wrist rubs. Red flags are lightweight, a hollow feel, and lettering that looks printed rather than cut, because plenty of gold-plated souvenirs exist. So take an unmarked one to a jeweller for a non-destructive metal reading before you pay real money. Number 1. The bowl of old wedding rings. On the corner of the table, in a chipped cereal bowl, a heap of plain bands and small stone rings, $2 each. I want to say something about that bowl first. Those were somebody's wedding rings. Every one of them was on a hand for decades, through a kitchen, a garden, a hospital corridor. They're in the bowl because a family ran out of time and didn't know what else to do. That isn't carelessness. That's grief with a deadline. Now, what you're looking for in there is platinum. From roughly the 1890s into the 1930s, platinum was the prestige metal for American engagement and wedding rings. Then it was restricted for war production, the trade moved to white gold, and platinum dropped quietly out of public memory. Which is why a platinum band today reads to almost everyone as silver and gets $2 on the tape. But be careful here, because this is where hopes get raised wrongly. Most old white metal rings are not platinum. White gold is far more common, and palladium, sterling, and plain base metal are all in that bowl too. And the magnet confirms nothing, because platinum, silver, and white gold are all non-magnetic, so the 10-second check is the mark. Read the inside of the shank with your loupe and a pen light, angling the light across it rather than straight at it. You want PLAT, or PT, or 950, or 900, or the phrase 10% iridplat, meaning platinum alloyed with iridium, a standard American recipe for many years. 10K, 14K, or 18K in a white color is white gold. No mark at all means no conclusion. Then wait. Platinum is markedly denser than silver, so lay 2 similar bands in your palm and one will feel like something else entirely. And platinum doesn't tarnish. A white band still bright after 70 years in a drawer, while the silver around it has gone grey, is worth reading. And while it's under the light, read the rest of the engraving, because there's very often a date and 2 sets of initials. Somebody's wedding day, cut into metal by a jeweller long gone. Safe next step. Take it to a jeweller and ask for an XRF reading. An electronic scanner. Touches the surface, damages nothing, about 15 seconds, and many shops will run 1 or 2 free while you wait. That's the only confirmation that counts, and it costs you a parking space. So, 3 rules to carry out the door. Rule 1. A yard sale price is somebody's opinion of how a thing looks. Everything I've given you is a way of finding out what a thing is. Marks, weight, temperature, wear, the way light passes through it. Rule 2. Buy at a price that's still fine if you're wrong. If it turns out to be ordinary costume jewellery, and most of the time it will, you should still be happy with what you paid. Nothing here is a way to get rich, and I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. You'll go through 50 tables of plated chain to find one thing worth carrying to a jeweller. Rule 3. And it isn't negotiable. Knowledge is for hunting, not for taking. Haggling is fair. Paying the asking price on a piece somebody chose to price is fair. But if a woman hands you her mother's box and asks honestly whether anything in it is real, she gets the truth, every time. That's the whole line between a collector and something else. Now, 2 things in the comments, because I read them. First, what's the best thing you've ever carried home from a yard sale, a church sale, or a thrift shop, and what did you pay? Brag a little. And second, where I'll happily argue with you. Nearly every video on this subject, mine included, is built around selling. Find it, identify it, cash it. And I think for a great many of you, the better answer is the opposite. If you find that platinum band with a stranger's wedding date inside it, I don't think the interesting thing is to flip it. Wear it, put it on a chain, write the date on a card and keep it in the box. I've watched a great deal of value leave a great many families, and almost none of it left because somebody kept a thing too long. Go on. Saturday morning, 7 o'clock. Take the loupe, take the magnet, and remember what each one is for. I'll see you at the next table.